Welcome to episode 2 of Talk Show. Today, I'm very, very proud to welcome a friend of mine, artist, always known as Pamela Stolz. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of where you got started and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I've grown up in Massachusetts. I grew up in Hubbardston. Then I left Massachusetts, lived in a few different places. And 4 years ago, maybe close to 5 years ago now, I came to Worcester and I've been living and working here. I work as a social worker, but I'm an artist as well, and primarily an oil painter. My work is very personal to me and always about something that I feel is a sort of quiet moment or something that doesn't get a lot of attention, but that really resonates with me and holds this deeper meaning. So some of the things you're talking about with my grandparents' home and these little pieces of that.
Whatever you saw in the home or in the yard or whatever at that moment, it could have been when you were 9 years old, just locked in there. And then when you put the paint to the canvas, it's like stepping into a time machine. But do you remember the moment that you kind of you did something and you thought, I want to do more of that? And you could have been 5 when it happened, but do you remember?
I'm trying to remember the first moment. It's hard because I feel like it's always been something, for some kids, I think art is the class that maybe they have fun in, but they don't put that like extra time and effort into. And I remember I was like, okay, let me rush through my other homework so I can spend more time on this or try this a different way. I think when I was in 7th grade, I won a prize for a painting that I made that was shown at Mount Wachusett Community College. And I remember feeling really proud of that and like, oh, I love this and this is how I like to express myself. But it was a nice moment of getting external validation for that.
Now you grew up in Hubbardston, right?
Yeah.
So you're way out in the country, as they like to say.
Way out in the country.
Do you find that living out there where it was sort of you had to make more and more for your imagination, kind of keep yourself busy a little less, where you could just walk across the street to this, walk across the street? Do you think that helped in your progress as far as, even if it was just from an intellectual level of becoming an artist?
Yeah, I think that it did. I feel like life's a little quieter out there and you have more time to sit and process things or observe things. I like to spend a lot of time outside when I was younger and still now, like just noticing things that maybe other people don't notice. Mm-hmm. I've always been a very introverted person, and I think that kind of plays into it too, just the way you process things.
I often think about how important it was to be able to come up with stuff on your own 6-7 hours at a time, and then how that helped, like your brain, just from a development standpoint, like, well, I have to make something out of nothing here. Those sort of developmental things were very helpful. It must have been the same for you.
Yeah, I think I don't really experience boredom very much. Mm-hmm. I feel like that has something to do with it. Like always, even just something I can think about on my own, doing nothing, and that's okay for me.
I can totally relate to that, yeah.
And I feel like also it's become a little bit harder now because I have lived in the city for a while, and I think there's just so much technology and instant gratification. Yep. But what I like about making paintings, I think I learned from childhood, is being able to really be in the present moment and just sit with something that would otherwise have left your mind instantly and really process all that's involved in that image you're looking at or all the context around that.
What techniques have you developed to sort of say, I am painting now and I'm not going to have the phone? Or have you, over the years, have you seen yourself have to really think that stuff through?
Yeah, definitely. When I was at Pratt for my undergrad, I studied fine arts, and it's like there was a lot of time dedicated to making art. I had a studio there, which was amazing. All of my friends were also artists, and we had classes that were 6 hours long. So I was making art constantly. And then when I left there and got a job and had all these other competing demands, like it became really important to make some sort of structure for myself and make sure that I'm keeping things going. And like a lot of things, once I start painting, I'm always so happy that I am.
Yeah.
But sometimes just going to painting can be the tricky part. I try to always have a painting going, even if I'm not able to work on it as much as I'd like to, just to know that I'm still making art and feeling like I'm not getting out of that. And then when I do go to make art, I try to make sure I have at least 2 to 3 hours to really sink into it and set up all the materials that I need and kind of clear out my mind and like go through.
Right? You like went from Hubbardston to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
No, you should have moved to Worcester, maybe.
To South Dakota, so to all the
and to South Dakota.
ways of even more rural, and somehow settled here, sort of middle ground in Worcester. I loved Hubbardston. I still do, but I didn't feel exactly like I fit there. Like I wanted to expand my worldview or to get to see what sort of as different a life as I could feel comfortable going into would be like. And I thought I just push myself now to go to New York City where everything feels like it's happening. That would be the best thing for my own development and for my art. It's sort of terrifying, but very freeing at the same time. Nobody knows me here. I've never had any experiences here, so I can just do and be whatever I want to be.
Be whatever you want, yeah.
Because I was there for school, I think that kind of took me into a certain direction. Of course, I had no money and lots of classes to take, so I wasn't going to all the museums and all the shows right away that I thought I'd be doing. But New York, to me, feels sort of you're interacting with another person as a city. Like there's a feeling there that everyone has to keep moving and you have to keep growing and learning and experiencing, and it's really hard to slow down there because then you feel like you're missing out on something. So I think that was great for me for 5 years that I was there, and I learned so much and experienced so much.
And you went from there out to the VISTA project?
Yeah, Americorps VISTA.
Americorps, yep.
Yeah, so I was on the Cheyenne River Indian Reservation in South Dakota, which is the size of Connecticut with the 8,000 people living there. Pretty rural.
You like to shock yourself, right? You like to shock your system. Ice, water, heat.
Exactly. I don't know what exactly that is, but I just feel like there's so much of life and so much to learn and observe, and the best way to do that is sort of
just
immerse
jump
yourself
in.
into different experiences. South Dakota is a gorgeous place. And I've never been somewhere where you can, Hubbardston was rural, but when one town ends, the next one begins. South Dakota, okay, here's 20 people in this town, then 20 minutes of absolutely nobody, and then population of 15 in this next town. How
did you discover the whole project itself? How did you discover AmeriCorps? Did you hear? It's been around for a little while now, but how did you sort of say, yeah, that's something I want to get interested in? Yeah,
so in addition to painting, I'd always done a lot of volunteer work, and I think because of my family, been interested in the community and figuring out ways to give back. So I thought about the Peace Corps, but then somehow in that discovery process, I figured out that AmeriCorps VISTA is very similar to the Peace Corps, but you stay domestically, and it's 1 year instead of 2. So I ended up applying to a whole bunch of different positions across the country. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this experience, we work at a nonprofit for a year, I might as well go somewhere I absolutely know nothing about and have never been.
Is that an area hard to leave once you're there for a while? Does it become just as powerful as the city?
Yeah, I think in a very different way, it still is a place that has a lot of power. It was hard to leave. Also, I feel like it's a place that it never felt like my home. I always felt in a way like a visitor. So it was a different experience than when I left New York, and I had felt like New York was my home, and
Yep.
and I didn't know. I always knew going into South Dakota that it would be for 1 year, but New York, I felt like maybe I'll stay here forever.
Did it change how you looked at the area you lived in when you moved back here?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, while I was in South Dakota is when I started painting images about the house that my grandparents had lived in. So I did start thinking about things in my childhood and growing up that I just took as, I don't say for granted, but just they just are. And I didn't think about them as such strong presence in my life until I was away from that, until I saw such different ways of life. So I came home one time while I was in South Dakota and took a bunch of pictures of that house. And I started the paintings then. When I left there, I didn't really know where I was going to live next. I was in Memphis for a very short time, and then came back to Massachusetts, ended up getting an apartment in Worcester, and I just kept going with those paintings about this house that really my grandfather's family had lived in before them, and so many of my relatives had, the split level, lived in one or the other of the apartments, and actually my parents now live in it. My grandparents have since passed away, but that was my initial just project, I guess, just painting all these different images, trying to capture my family's history and how that made me who I am, and not let those feelings go, kind of understand them on a deeper level.
Because there was a time where people didn't take pictures of every salad that they ate, every time they pulled over. Do you think that was something that occurred to you, maybe even innately, just sort of like, I got to get this stuff down?
Yeah, definitely. I think what you say about how now everyone can just take a picture of everything, but the value of those photos sort of goes down because of that. It's another reason why my paintings usually takes me hours and hours to make them. And I like the idea of just focusing on this one corner of the house or this one street that I pass all the time, and being able to just sit with that and absorb it in a way that I never would when just taking a photograph.
It really comes through. You know, there's a picture that the painting that you did, it looks like maybe your mom is sitting on the porch and you got the image from maybe across the street or something like that. But
yeah.
I love that shot. I love that. Yeah.
I feel like art is a way of communicating. And even though my work is deeply personal, I feel like if you're really authentic in your work and it is really personal, then it becomes relatable to everyone. I feel like that painting is an example of that, because I had a lot of people say, oh, that's like my grandparents' home, or that's like the house I grew up next to. And I think if you're really true to your work, then other people can find their own as well.
How did I noticed that paintings come in, obviously you paint on all sorts of different size canvases, but you have to sit down with that canvas. What makes you decide that the inspiration you have is going to go on a 8x8 canvas versus a bigger one? Is there just because you have that canvas and it doesn't matter, you're good with that, or does it seem like a smaller painting or a larger painting when you start envisioning it in your brain?
I think it can be some of both. If I have a canvas, I'm like, oh, I want to work on this next. I like this. I like what can I envision here? But more often, something about that photograph that I've taken or whatever it is that I want to paint, I feel like tells me what size it should be. If it needs to be smaller and more intimate, or more space to really get into the details, something larger to make a different kind of impact. I don't know if I have an exact science to it, but just kind of feel it out. When it comes to larger scale art, I feel like there's more of a part of it that, like, okay, do you have the space to create this, the money to buy this very expensive large canvas? if you're not going to sell it right away, where are you going to store all these?
That's a good point.
There can be more of those kinds of considerations as well.
That brings me to my next question, which was about your recent work with the murals projects down in the city. You go from canvas to a mural. From a creative standpoint, it's a totally different animal, I would imagine.
It's so different. I was first asked to be a part of Powwow Worcester, I think in 2017. And that was really the first large wall that I painted on the back of the Arts Worcester Magnet School. And I had to think completely differently. Because like I said, a lot of my art is intimate and personal, and I was thinking, oh, how am I going to do that and make that translate to this giant wall? And I also usually work with oil paints, which you can't use outside, so I switched to acrylic. And they take a very, very long time on my smaller paintings. I'm like, okay, I can't do this exact same thing scaled up in 1 week. So I thought about that a lot, and I had thought about some different designs, like maybe I should, change my style or change my message in some way. But ultimately I decided, I actually think it would be really cool to make something that's still this intimate, small moment and blow that up and make that large. Like, that's a cool opportunity. So I made these two hands holding over groceries to kind of show just this simple act of love on an ordinary day. So what I did is I made a sketch, or sort of a miniature version of that painting, and then, like you mentioned, I gridded it out. So I used tape to make the grid 1 foot by 1 foot on the wall, and then sort of sketched that out there and just went from there. When you look at a canvas, you have multiple canvases, and you're struck by this idea for a painting. And, if other people don't like it, that's fine. I needed to express this. That's great. Now you're doing a mural, and it's sort of a one shot, right? Yeah. You're like, hey, well, I don't know. Can I change that one up? I'd like to change that. I definitely did feel a different amount of pressure. I usually paint alone in my studio, and you make a mistake or something, nobody sees that, you just do what you do to fix that or move on. So I did feel more exposed making a mural. People can see me throughout this process. Hey, what is that? What's that supposed to be? If it doesn't come out well, it's gonna be here. Right. Yeah. So I think the 2017 mural was the second time I was in Powell, but the first time I didn't make a mural on a wall. I had made a 6 foot by 6 foot painting behind the common. So that was my first time painting in public, although it wasn't quite a mural. I remember I was working on something, and some guy's just like, oh, he's missing the nose, or he's missing a face or something. It was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. I haven't gotten to that part yet. People just thank God you said something. Just giving me their feedback, comments. Like, you were like, I got my checklist. I got eyes, mouth, ears. I think I'm good. Hold on. Is there a painting that you have been looking at your whole life, and no matter how many times you see it, it never gets old to you? It always strikes you. I guess the Van Gogh painting, what's it called? A Cafe Terrace, it might be called. It's just this nighttime view of this little outdoor cafe with these lights inside and the night sky around it. It just feels so intimate and so good. And it's warm too. Like, look at it forever. Do you have ambitions as an artist, the things you'd like to not only just accomplish, but levels you'd like to reach as far as your own skills or even notoriety? I guess my ambitions are just to always continue painting and always continue progressing. I feel like if I look through the history of my art just in the past 10 years, I see a sort of progress, or these little shifts that represent different times in my life. And I want to really keep that going. And then definitely expand my reach and who else sees my art. What's that next step? I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot this past year, because I was in grad school and working before that. So I was still, like I said, always making sure I have at least a painting on the easel and I'm keeping things going, but I didn't feel at that time like I had the capacity to push my art to the next step career-wise. And now I feel like I do, so I'm sort of still figuring out that's gallery representation, just really committing to submitting to more shows, figuring out if I could do a residency somewhere, deciding how I can take that next step and what's the right one for me.
Well, you can create this stuff that's really worthy of being called timeless. All your work is, I think, timeless. There's no era where you could look at your stuff and be like, that's so dated, or it looks like the 70s, or it's just life. It's life that forever it'll be life. Who's the best Simpson character? You like the Simpsons?
Oh, I liked the Simpsons growing up and I haven't watched any. Silent Bob. What's the clown? I'm answering terribly. My dad's gonna
Sideshow
Bob. Yes,
that's a great character.
Silent Bob's another person.
I think is either Carl or Lenny.
They are very underrated. I didn't expect you to say that.
All right, well there you go, Lenny and Carl. But I just want to thank you so much for doing the show. I think the world of you, and just really grateful for you taking the time, especially on a Friday night. You must have had big plans for tonight.
I know. Yeah, we had to cancel a lot of things to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great to talk with you, and I hope we do continue to work together.